And so Malta had more to offer than just cost. It had a very solid infrastructure, a superb regulator. Having worked, I've worked in Ireland, Cyprus, Mauritius, Bermuda, Hong Kong, Singapore, and I've never met a regulator like the MFSA. You can ring them, 2 days notice, a day's notice, or even on the day, and say you have a client that wants to meet you, and they will come and sit down, discuss the fund structure, point out where they may have issues, and make suggestions on how best to fix those issues, that they can be accommodated within the law. Certainly wouldn't get that in Dublin, and certainly wouldn't get it in Luxembourg either. And if you're coming from that environment of Cayman and Bermuda, to move across into Malta, you want that proximity where you can sit down and talk to the regulator and find out what you need to do to become regulated.
It's much easier to organize meetings in Malta than to organize it in larger jurisdictions. Secondly, we're starting from a small base, so really and truly we've grown tremendously in these last 3 to 4 years, but again, feet on the ground, we've started from a small base. And I think we may face the challenges of not having access to the regulator, with the same degree of efficiency we're having today in 5 years' time. That could be the case, and that's a challenge for us. But I think it's my strong view that Malta is very competitive insofar as the accessibility to the regulator, when compared to other EU regulators. And no one can dispute that, in my view.
Although you could theoretically go to the regulator on your own as an investment manager, I find that it's not always as productive as Mr. O'Driscoll would suggest. Sometimes you really do need to have the lawyer with you, just to make sure you're asking the right questions and to present it in the best way. Because sometimes you can say something that you really didn't mean, and it gives a whole wrong impression.
I think, looking at the growth of the industry, that we will face 2 core challenges going forward. The first one is definitely capacity constraints. I mean, Malta is what it is, 400,000 population, 160,000 working population, And the second one is accessibility. And the reason behind that, as you rightly pointed out, within the context of Luxembourg, we're an island. So, the accessibility to the island from the main European airports has to be very robust, because that will facilitate business. The second one is the trickier part, because the second one deals with the actual human resource, which underpins, any services industry. And that is a very big challenge for us, because we know that the industry will be hungry for additional resources going forward.
There are apparently some 1 million Maltese living outside Malta, as opposed to 400,000 within Malta. And we have started to identify this hidden talent pool, many of whom have ended up in the financial services industry in major centres around the world, who have shown a keenness now to come back to Malta. So that represents definitely a talent pool. And to just back up what Kenneth said earlier about attracting foreign employees, we certainly within the group are moving people around, and believe me, when people come to visit Malta, quite easily persuaded to relocate there. Hence we've brought people in from Hong Kong as custody experts, we've brought people in from Germany, with much experience in the institutional industry. So I'm not as concerned as many about the restriction of the talent pool.
We are quite a bit smaller than Malta. On the other, and so that certainly is a challenge for us. But on the other hand, we're not an island. You can walk into Spain from any place in Gibraltar. And it'll take you less than half an hour. For most places, less than 10 minutes. And there is a huge contingent of, I would say, about half of the finance center in Gibraltar lives in Spain, and they commute in every day. And because we're European, anyone with a European passport can work in Gibraltar. So it's really quite common for the finance center to be made up of, to a great extent, of expats. Where I do see a challenge will be in office space, and it is a challenge. There are quite a few developments that have gone up and that are becoming available now, and that are going up and will be available in a couple of years' time.
There will be growing pains for Malta, but at the same time, the numbers, you know, the Isle of Man is 3 times the size of Malta in space, but has a much smaller population of just 80,000. But the size of the fund industry, the administration, is a multiple of Malta's. So these problems will reach a head at some point, perhaps at a break-even point, but it's a long way off at this point. And I also have seen, again, in the growth in the Isle of Man, and I was in Bermuda for 7 years. The Isle of Man has, doesn't have the same EU access. There's no university there for education, but it was, you know, if you build it, they will come. And as the business becomes more successful, that will attract people into the business. It will reach an optimum level.
I think for Malta it will depend on a number of how the IFMA directive actually comes down at the end, and again, as we build the custodian element in Malta, I would like to see it double for sure.
Well, we've had 105 last year, so I think could increase by 1.5 times this year, as things stand at the end of this year. In terms of assets, it's difficult because the markets were in a state of flux in these last 2 years, so trying to follow trends is very difficult. We've had an 8% growth last year in terms of AUAs on the net basis, so I think we'll enjoy a 15 to 20% growth this year.
Okay, Paul?
Again, I think it's a lot of it will be subject to how the directive plays out. If it continues to limp on, we probably thought it would be there by this time a year ago. So that's a benefit to Malta, where people will read on the basis it's a safer option. But even so, I'd probably, again, optimistically hope for between sort of 13 and 50% increase.
Reaching a critical mass in Malta and getting to a certain tipping point where it's creating some stickiness. So I would look for a doubling of net asset values and number of funds there by the end of 2011. I think that's certainly an aspiration.
I would say, so we had I think 20 funds last year, so I would say the growth by end of 2011 would be 150 to 200% of that.